right, to start us off, can you each share a little bit of how Paradise came to you and first thoughts?
Oh, do me last.
You can jump in any way you would like.
I was
You would've been
there.
first,
Yeah, I was there.
We're at Inception, yes.
Very early. Like I got the pilot from Dan Fogelman, and he sent it to me, and he's like, "Read this thing. What do you think about it? Like, is there anything to this show?" And you saw the pilot. It was pretty similar to what was shot, and I loved it. And it was like, this is really cool. And he's like, "Okay, I want to gather you. I want to grab another writer. This guy Scott Weinger, who's also an actor writer." And then Dan brought in his producing partner Jess and hired us for like 3 months to sit around and just be like, what could this show be? And I think with Dan, he knows a show is going to get greenlit if he goes all in. So he's like, do I want to spend the next 3 years of my life doing this show? And so by the end of that 2 or 3 months, it's like, okay, we figured out what it is. A lot of what it is, even going into what will be season 3, came out of that room. So it was very early on. Like we were doing interviews with experts and city planners and all this kind of deep research with these very suspicious people, because we would get on these Zooms and Dan would be like, well, pretend Elon Musk hired me and I'm asking you, how do you design a city to go under a mountain? And you could see they'd be like, did Elon Musk hire you to?
Because that's what Elon would tell you to say.
It's exactly. That's what it felt like. But anyways, yeah. So that's kind of, from the very beginning, sort of not day one because Dan had written this pilot, but really early on. Yeah.
Josh, what was
Yeah, I would have been next. It was January 23, so nobody was working. So I had a lot of time on my hands. And I just got this, Tiffany Little Canfield, the other casting director, we got this email from Dan. I think the title of it was just Our Next Project, with a script. Like that was it. And Tiffany actually was working on something then, so she couldn't read it right away. But I, of course, was very excited, and not just because it was Dan, but, work. And plowed through it, and was thinking like, oh, political thriller. And then you get to the last couple pages, and my brain exploded. I'm like, I can't believe he did it again. And I can't believe I didn't see it. Like, I should have known. It's Dan. I should have known, been looking for something. But yeah, and I wrote back, and I think the first thing I said was like, wow, you did it again. That was amazing. And the other thing I put in it was, does Sterling know that you wrote a script for him? Because I got one person on my list.
Well, that's the thing. I don't think, he wrote it for Sterling in the back of his mind, but it was not front and center. I think he just... Yeah, and then we were all like, oh, this wasn't written for Sterling, because it sure feels like it was this entire time.
Yeah, I really was like, he better say, the reply we get better be yes, because otherwise, like, I would actually have to come up with a list. I don't know who I'd put on it.
Sterling told the story, and he got an email from Dan being like, hey, man, how you doing? If you have a second, read this. I think I wrote it for you. And
that's honest.
Yeah, that was just that, and then it's in his inbox, and he was like, "Okay." Yeah. And the way he tells the story, he was like, man, I don't know, like, he's Sterling K. Brown, he's got a lot going on, and apparently I think he made it through 1.5 episodes, and then emailed him back and was like, "Okay, yeah, we're doing this."
I think he talked to Dan and then said, "I'm in," but Dan just heard it as "Amen," and he's like, "What's that mean? Like, you like it? Amen."
Yeah,
Wasn't that what it was?
Yeah,
and Sterling was like, "Why aren't you more excited about this?" But it was quick. Like, he read it and he was all in, which is cool.
Very funny.
Yeah.
No, John, what were your first
Well,
thoughts?
so I came to this way later. Everybody knew what was going on but me, right? And so I made a tape. I was asked to tape for it, so I made a tape with my wife in our living room, and like you do if you're an actor, that's what being an actor is. It's making a tape with your wife in your living room. And she said, "I like this guy for you," which is a thing that she's only said like 6 times, and her batting average is like 80%. So I was like, "Oh, okay, that's a good feeling," but it's just a tape you toss out into the ether. You guys know the feeling? Yeah. And then I got a call that they'd like to jump on a Zoom, and that was Tiffany and Dan. who I've been a fan of for a long time. So that now I'm in my living room. We had switched from my cell phone to my laptop because the Zoom function is better on the laptop. So it's a table, and then it's like 8 books, and then it's, you know what I mean? So this is how it came to me. You guys wanted to know. And then there's Dan Fogelman and Tiffany Little Canfield, and we played around, and that went well. And then I went in and did a test, live in the room test. And at that time, I had only read the pilot, so I knew what everybody knows at the end of the pilot. You guys have all seen it, yeah? And so that pilot, by the way, reads as crazy on the page as it does on the screen. And so, like, I read the thing and loved it. I'm flipping pages. And then all of a sudden, on the last page, you go up and around the sun and back down, and then the end. And I had to back up 10 pages because I'm a pretty good reader, but I'll miss some stuff, you know. So I went back 10 pages, and sure enough, nope, you just go up and around the sun. And I was like, okay, let's go. So we went to the test, and that's all I knew. And then Dan ended up actually asking me to read some additional scenes. And so when he did that, he had to hand me these pages from later in the thing, and I was happy to do it, but I also had to go like, bro, I've got like 30 questions. Because, you know, every episode of this thing, I don't know how far you guys have gotten, but the twists keep on coming. So, like, if they hand you pages from 104, you're going, okay, I'll do this, but, like, does she hate me? You know, so anyway, I was the last guy to get to Paradise.
He's being real modest about how that went. Like,
No, I remember this so clearly. I remember seeing your tape from your, and Dan and I were instantly texting each other like, I think this is our guy. Like that early. We really did. And then Dan said,
tell my wife.
It was her camera work. It was
In her
perfect.
reading, I
She's
bet
a
was really
great reader, honestly.
But there was also, he said it was one of his favorite casting stories ever because it's like, he said, I felt it, I knew it, but you want to get the whole team to be as excited in that moment. Yeah. And that's why he was like, go out there. And he said, you came in, you only had 10 minutes to prep this huge speech, I think, right?
He was willing to give John longer. He was like, take all the time you need. We know where you're throwing it. It's a big scene. It was the scene at the end of 4, right? It was the like
with Julianne. If anybody's seen the whole thing, I'm like, go head to head.
You better have, because we're spoiling stuff. But it was like I guess I shouldn't swear because this is for posterity. But it was like send the biggest MFer you got, and the whole scene. And he memorized it in 3 minutes. Tiffany walked out and was like, do you want to run it? He's like, no, let's go. And came in and threw it down in a way that like was so cool and admirable and had so much energy going and was bouncing up and down. And they gave him a note and he did it again. And it was fantastic. It was one of the most electric chem read. I guess it wasn't. It was just Tiffany reading with you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Tests I'd seen. It was great.
Well, that's very sweet coming from you, man. Yeah. A lot of that goes to Tiffany Little Canfield, who was my reading partner. She's the casting director, but also like a very decent actress, like a really very talented actress. She gets squeamish when I say that, but she is, and you know what a difference that makes. Remember when we used to audition with casting directors? Sorry, that's just for us. I don't mean to be that guy, but it was a special. The whole thing's been special, and Dan threw his arm around me through the casting process, and I could feel that. I could feel that he was vouching for me, and that you guys were pulling for me. And there were some, we won't say names, but there were some fancy people kind of circling the role, and part of the reason for doing the additional scene was that Dan was like, let me show him what I think I see. And guys, like, I mean, this is a sidebar, but like, you know how it is. Like, we're out there, we're roaming the wilderness, we've got our cameras in our living rooms, and maybe there's somebody out there, and then, every once in a while you connect with the material and somebody sees it, and somebody like Dan Fogelman, like, takes a chance on a person because he feels it in his gut instead of sees it on your IMDb star meter or whatever. That's the kind of guy that this dude is, and that he keeps around him. And
we fixed your star meter.
Yeah. It was an adjustment. Yeah. Anyway,
She's soaring now.
But it was such a crucial character. Like we really were like, are we going to find this person who's lovable but also can play very scary and tough, and who would mean so much to Sterling's character that when he dies, it is a midpoint of the entire season, and we've got to feel the same thing Sterling feels when he loses this best friend, and so that's why it was such like we had to find the perfect person for it.
And also, just side note, beautiful death. Just real nice work.
that's a good
Just
one.
really
Thanks. You always want to hear that. Beautiful death.
real
Thank you, Laura.
classy. So Dan Fogelman is known for his long game vision for his projects. I'm curious, from the first concept meeting, how much or how little were you all told into the grand arc of this?
Well, I guess that's a me thing because you knew, yeah. I knew more than I did on This Is Us, but we've been joking. Like, I finally figured out that Dan uses me as like a mini test audience because I have zero game face. So like, he'll throw things at me and be like, "What did Josh say?" He used to literally hold surprises at the end of a meeting of This Is Us. Like, we wouldn't get all the pages, like, because the last two had some huge secret at the end of it. And he'd be like, "Oh, by the way, there's 11 new characters." Cool. And apparently, like, and there were, like, he wasn't joking, but he apparently did that partly just to watch my face. Anyway, so there was a lot of explaining the world and all the work that they had done and the rabbit holes that they had gone down to create this world and what that would be. So in a very rough way, we knew what the arc was going to be and where things were headed, and there were a few storylines. I think we got the first 3 scripts pretty quick.
Speaking of, we went down rabbit holes, like day-long discussions about would they have paper. Like, they were not fun rabbit holes, but we had so much of this built out by the time we brought people in.
I mean, the level of stuff that they got into, which didn't necessarily affect me, but it's very helpful for us to sort of understand the world that we're helping to build, was the furniture. And I remember the conversation being like, yeah, there are like probably like 3 models of sofas, and everybody's got those 3 sofas. And they'll decorate differently, and you won't really notice it, but any house you go into, it'll have those 3 sofas, because that's what they could bring. Stuff like that was very helpful for us to understand what kind of people we were going to be putting in this world. I had a lot of questions, like, is anybody going to be over the age of 60? Like, you know, like, is it really one of those, like, are we building a Noah's Ark thing? And it wasn't an issue. But, like, the depth of questions that we had that we don't usually, because we were quite literally world building. So it wasn't even so much the arc of the season as the world that we were building that was really intense.
Do you remember, we talked a lot about, because it's broken down by social class there. So like billionaires can be however old they want, that they could come in. But there was like a 60-year cutoff. And then there were different, like the sofas he's talking about, like the blue collar people would have one set of IKEA choices, and then the middle class, and et cetera. So he really broke it down, but it also bled into the casting of it too. Like, okay, well, this is a billionaire. This is how they might act or look. And so
yeah, and then they're bringing some workers down to be the blue collar of paradise. So who are they? And what does that look like? And yeah, it really did affect, knowing that we were casting the social strata of the remainder of humanity, was it was very heavy. It was very heavy. There was I gotta say, like, there was something going into it where we were picking these people, and there was a little bit more loaded emotionally because of the nature of the story.
John, having a clear vision for Xavier, Cal, and Sinatra, and them going and what they're going to take throughout the season, but also the arc of the show, how do you push your limits as a writer, but also stay really true to each of those characters' voices?
You know, it's funny. Season 1, I started thinking of it as a Western for some reason, like that Xavier is a single-minded character who lives by his own set of rules. And he doesn't care if the president or someone in power, you know, tells him no. If it breaks sort of his moral code, he will go against it. And so for Xavier, it's been really interesting because he is our star. So that is, we want you to feel what he's feeling. Like that, to me, as a writer, is always important. I want you to have that physical experience of that. Like I mentioned a second ago about when Billy dies, and that's a breaking point. If you get to that scene, that's where Xavier almost gives up. And then Robinson comes in and is like, let's take these guys down. And so we wanted you to feel that. And so Xavier, it's just keeping, I have this super simple concept of writing, which is it's just 3 words. It's a hero goal with a goal, and there's an obstacle. Those 3 words. And Xavier's stories to me, and every story, is about a character desperately wanting something, and now our job is to throw stuff in the way. And with a hero like Xavier, it's like he's got this moral code. Let's try to break it. Let's see if we can bring him to the point where he will go against his own, and season 2, we put the guy through hell. I mean, that's what we're doing. And Sinatra is kind of the same thing, where she has her own set of, she has this goal of this is what has to be done to save humanity. And her code is all over the map as long as she can save humanity. And she thinks she's doing something great, so she'll kind of let other people die so that she can save this small group. And then deep down inside for both of them, this is a long answer to this, but is I feel like the show circles around grief and trauma and loss, right? And so Sinatra, the key to her entire character is she lost her son, and she's never gotten over that. Even in the scene with the therapist, she says, I'll never be fixed. Just make me be able to function. And so she's ignoring fixing herself, and that's not a healthy path. And Xavier's ignoring that his wife is gone in a lot of ways, and that's not a healthy path either. And through the course of season 1, Xavier kind of acknowledges his wife is dead. For the first time, he's kind of talking about it, and he's rewarded by finding her, or finding that she might be alive. So,
the maybe. Sinatra, to me, was such a fascinating character, and Julianne, like,
yeah.
I still remember the moment when Dan, he likes to mull. He loves a good mull. And we had talked about a lot of different people for it. And I don't know if he's just sort of hearing it in his head or bouncing it off other people or what, but Tiffany and I brought up Julianne very early. She, to me, like, is one of those people, anytime you put her in anything, it's better. And the character was so complex that you had to have a certain amount of sympathy, because she keeps getting labeled the bad guy and evil and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, yeah, but the place it's coming from is this sad, sweet, broken heart and her beautiful little boy. And to have that complexity was so important. And I was so excited when we're on a Zoom and he said, I think it's Julianne. And I don't remember what Tiffany said, but I said, go effing get her. Which is, I don't usually talk to Dan that way, but I was very excited. And I think it's borne out. Like, I think what she has brought in terms of levels to Sinatra, I think, is so much more interesting than a normal bad guy.
Well, and I will just add, like, when Billy is killed, do you remember this moment? You're like, I don't give a shit about your fucking son. Do you remember that? We put a thunderclap in there, by the way, a muffled thunderclap, because he literally just signed his death warrant by saying, I don't care about your son in that moment. So,
well, and that's it's moments like that I think are what separates this show from the genres that it's not hiding behind, but it is a whodunit, and it is a thriller, and it is a high sci-fi concept-y thing, but really we're there because these people have clear wants and clear flaws, and when they accidentally interact with the deepest part of each other, there's like destinies shift. And I think that's because of the work that you are talking about doing, where you guys started so deeply in, hero, goal, and conflict, and you started so deeply in character that the plot really just serves to move these people into direct conflict or direct alignment with each other so we can reveal more of what's in their heart. And I think that's why I love the show. And you pay me to be on it.
Right. No, and that's what Dan does great is this, and it's why flashbacks work so effectively, is you're seeing origin moments of a character.
Right.
And my big joke was it's an apocalyptic show, but we want the heart of, This Is Us. And I was calling it This Is the Last of Us for a while. But I think it is deep inside. That's what it is. It is about human beings going through ordeals and,
Yeah, me and Chris Marshall were saying, come for the apocalypse, stay for the feels. Which I think is accurate.
I mean, and I think that that's something that's so beautiful with like this synergy of this creative team, because with her and her son at the grocery store, regardless of what she had done, you felt for her. You felt a sympathy for her. And there's, Uncle Billy with Xavier's kids, and there's like this like little twinkle that you see regardless of how bad and how dark it gets. You get to go further in those directions because you have that levity and it's believable.
Well, and I actually think what you're talking about, I think that's Dan's superpower. I think that's you guys' superpower. I think it is, let me introduce you to somebody and you're going to love them. And then they're going to do something unforgivable. Then let me show you why they did that unforgivable thing. And you're going to forgive them. Mm-hmm. And it's that trick of like, oh, and I believe it's what you guys are ultimately about, which is if you could see anyone in the appropriate context, you would identify with them. Mm-hmm. So here's the trick. I'm going to do it to you. I'm going to take it away. I'm going to give it back to you. And ultimately, like, Who Killed the President is super awesome. And like, Are We Going to Get Out of the Bunker is really fun. But are we all basically the same? Do we all want and need the same things? And are they as simple as, love and safety and validation? That's pretty dope inside of a bunker.
One of the things that I love in the aftermath of your episode, everybody forgot how much they hated Billy.
Mm-hmm. My mother called and she was furious about it. She's like, there's a lot of F words in this particular episode and a lot of them came from Billy. But then she was so mad when you were dead. Like, she was angry at me.
But boy, like by the end of episode 3, everybody hated Billy.
Guys, the Instagram response from 3 to 4 was extreme. Like, my stuff was blowing up with, you better stay away from her. I knew it was you all along, you bastard. And then 1 week later, it was just crying emojis. We miss you so much. And I was like, you're the same person 7 days ago. Well, that's just, I mean, that's what they do.
You seem like a killer, then you were caught playing Wii.
Yeah.
Suddenly you're a murderer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Whiplash.
Oh, man. What a ride. I kind of want to watch it again, don't you?
That's like the beautiful thing about this show. Regardless of how many times you watch it through, you still start seeing these new details, these new little nuances and choices. And
yes. Yes.
Watch it again.
Well, that was that wasn't really a question. I'm just talking now, I guess. But I think I was walking with like you and Katie or somebody, like, and we were just chatting and we went back to Dan's office, and at which point I was like, oh, I will turn around and leave now because I am not an executive producer. And he was like, no, come in. And then showed us a bunch of pieces from episode 1, which apparently they hadn't even seen yet. And I remember watching the James the Cal and Xavier in the hospital. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. And when he gets to he starts to walk out and then he turns back. He's like, when you get out of here, let's talk about the future. And it was one of those things where I'm like, nobody's going to understand how loaded that is until you go back and rewatch it. And James's performance there was so stellar because once you know what he knows, that line plays so differently than it did when you think it's just like, hey, you saved your life, I'm going to look out for you now. I mean, you saved my life, I'm going to look out for you now. And that was the first time I knew in my head that that's how the audience ride was going to go, but I remember walking back with Dan and being like, everybody's going to watch this show twice. Like, the rating is going to be like twice because everybody's going to have to go back and see it all again.
When you are going through the casting process and building out a world, what kind of conversations are you having for qualities, strengths, examples, reference material? What kind of conversations are you having about what you're looking for in these characters and for the actors to play them?
Well, we just come off 6 years of This Is Us, so we knew. Yeah, we spoke Dan. Knew very much the kind of actor that he wanted and how internal they were. And also coming off of This Is Us, knowing that the audience reacts to the characters differently than the characters will be acting. Like everybody who came in for This Is Us thought that they had to cry, for example. Mm-hmm. And I was always giving the note back when you were in a room. I was like, no, actually, you don't. You're trying not to cry. Yeah, like that's what's actually interesting here. And that struggle and that layer on top. So knowing that anything that was happening on this show was going to have those layers was going to be important for the quality of the actor we were looking for.
You know what I found about Dan in casting? I think he's brilliant at casting. And it's the same quality he has in writing and editing and stuff, which is he has this ability to almost forget he's looking at his own work or forget that he had something in his mind when he wrote Billy. And then he'll watch tapes like a fan or a viewer, right? And it's hard to do. I try to do it. Sometimes I'm successful, other times I'm not. But I think what he does is he's able to distance himself and just be like, oh, wow. And that allows him to be surprised by someone and go in a direction you never expected.
Well, and that is how we got John.
Yeah.
Yeah, I looked at what you guys had on the page in terms of the breakdown, and you know how it is. Sometimes you see the breakdown, you're like, I'm gonna make this tape, but like they're not looking for me. And this dude is like, you know, muscle built, shaved head, looks like a, you know, like a running back. And I was like, I mean, like, you know, I'm a string bean of a man, you know. This is not me. My wife said the thing though. So, like, you know, when Hannah says the thing, it's like, I don't know. But she could see through the breakdown. Maybe she saw with Dan, so I don't know how you guys are doing that. But I definitely felt like I was an alternative choice. I don't know how true that was for you guys.
I think I think so a little bit.
Well, it was like the other. So much about Dan, like, is he's able to stand back. He's also able to stand back and be very practical. But there are times actually when he wants what's on the page. Yeah. Some of the people I pitched for the president, for example, were out of the box, and I didn't know what was coming in 7. Right. And he was like, "No, we need this guy to be president."
We didn't think Weird Al was the right option.
Yeah,
I just said
it wasn't. I mean, hey,
but you took a swing.
Yeah. In fairness, I had a newborn and was real tired, and some of my ideas, like I look back on, I'm like, oh, thanks. I'm glad Dan had a young kid and understood like what I had been through. But there are times where he knows, like, no, I need what we wrote. Like, this is the thing, and there's a reason for it. And sometimes he'll tell us what it is, and sometimes he won't. And he really didn't with Cal. He just like, no, we need that. With Billy, because we had some more Famey McFamerson type people in the mix, Dan is practical enough to know, sure, those people bring in eyeballs. And I was sure that this was going to be a time where he was going to do that. But he said from the very beginning, I think this guy's it. And I remember Tiffany and I were very excited about that, but I'm like, he's not going to do it. At the end of the day, I don't think he's going to pull the trigger. But then when he gave you that other scene, I was like, oh my God, it's not an exercise. He's not the alternative. Like, we're really going to get the guy we want.
That's wild.
I mean, you needed humor, intimidated. Like, there were all these qualities that are very hard to find in an individual. And there was something nice about not a giant name also. Like, there was something cool because it felt like a friend of yours in a lot of ways. And I don't know. I love that.
I do love killing a famous person.
Oh, who doesn't?
But I mean, I guess we did that already, like in the first 3 seconds of the show. So I guess we didn't have to do it again. But that was another reason why I was like, oh, we get 2 of those in here. But,
2 kills.
Yeah, I mean that way.
That's amazing.
John, when you're building a new show world like Paradise that has elements that are real familiar and close to some elements of reality we live in, what are things that you want to be really careful in telling, and what are some of those conversations and thought processes?
You mean like in the room and we're dealing with, it was interesting because it felt like things that we worked on just kept happening in the real world, both as we were doing it. There was a moment where we had a scene where Sinatra came out of an office in the Oval Office and talked to the president. And we really were like, is there a reality where a billionaire would be invited just to hang out in the Oval Office? And things like that, I think, it was really interesting. It feels like we were keyed in on, we did a lot of research just on the world outside, but some of that's just, we happened to be lucky and land on some topics. But I think they're topics we're all really focusing on these days, even 3 years ago, post-pandemic and all that. And I think it was just kind of following where the story wanted to go, and it led where I guess life wanted to go too. Yeah.
I'd love to talk about the directors and the impeccable visual language in season 1. So good. How much of that was discussed? How much of that was from you and Dan's creative mind? How much of that was the directors that you chose to put in those positions?
What do you picture when you say that? Because you say that with some feeling. Like, what do you specifically? What's the first thing that jumps to your head?
Well, I'm
just
like
curious.
a painfully visual person. I could roll out that clock. The way that they changed directions of how we as the audience saw. Like sometimes we would be behind, sometimes we would be able to see the full picture. There was intention with every single camera placement.
Yeah.
None of it was, we're losing light, we got to just get coverage.
Right. Yeah.
We have Yasu was the DP on This Is Us, and Yasu really sets the language.
That dude good.
He's so good, and he's so fast, and if you were to ask, he's very quiet when
He's crazy fast. Sorry to interrupt, but
No.
like you guys have been on sets, man. Like it is usually speed or quality, And like sometimes like there are formula shows out there that just need somebody to knock it out, and the coverage is basically the same, and that's awesome. I consider that a high art. Like you can crank 10, 12 pages a day, like amazing, like go for it. Or, I've worked for auteur directors who will light a scene for 3 hours because they can, and it's impeccable and it's beautiful. Honestly, to be as good as this guy is, to be as intentional as you say, to be as detail-oriented and bang out like setups, it's remarkable. He's like, that dude good.
Yeah, and it's all intentional. He knows what he wants. He knows what he's trying to go for. And then John and Glenn, who set the tone in the pilot, also, did a lot. They did the pilot for This Is Us. Crazy Stupid Love, I think, is the first time they worked with Dan. They just, everything they're doing, they've thought through. The number of meetings we all had leading up to shooting is ridiculous, but everything was intentional, and John and Glenn really had a clear vision on how to do this and how to hide in plain sight the fakeness of the world, where there were parts, if you didn't realize it, you're like, that looks a little bit like a backlot. And it was intentional. Like even in post, we cleaned up cracks on the roads. So it looked a little like uneasy, but you didn't know why. It just felt a little too clean. So all those decisions really added up, I think.
My mom, like at the end of the pilot, she was texting me during the pilot, and she was like, this is great, but it looks... She's like, I got to talk to you about the look of it. Yeah. And my mom doesn't hide her cards very well. She's like, you're doing great, but it looks odd. It just doesn't look right to me. Not that I think she would know, but something was off. The lighting, it's just not quite. It feels something's artificial. But I like your work. And then at the end of the pilot, she was like, they're brilliant. They all had me right where they wanted me. So my mom is the target audience.
It's true.
You nailed it.
That was honestly, we were going for our moms and our nephews. It's like we were trying to get the whole spectrum of people. So
got her.
Glad we got her.
Got her.
One of the writers' moms, he said, like, what'd you think about the big reveal? They were under a mountain, and she was like, they are? But she also called this out, she loved the show, and she somehow missed that.
Oh, that's really funny.
I guess moms
it
are
is.
great.
I had to go back 10 pages, man. We went around the sun. You don't do that often.
It's true.
Josh, with all of the Emmy love and the fan love and just the admiration that the show has, how did submissions change from season 1 to season 2?
Well, it not really. When you've got I mean, you're starting with Dan Fogelman, and then, like, even in season 1, and then you've got John and Glenn directing and Sterling attached. Like, plus, it was right. We literally were prepping. I had a brand newborn. I was in a hotel room in North Carolina. We had our first concept meeting. She's so beautiful, Molly. While I'm in this hotel room in North Carolina holding this baby that nobody knew existed, including me 2 weeks earlier, and we're starting to prep for this show, knowing the strike was about to end, and we kind of got to cast whoever we want because everybody was available, which is sort of a crap thing to say, but it was true. And going into season 2, I actually have found things to be busier. It's still, people were willing to clear their schedules to come and play and to be a part of the show and a part of the world. I've been spoiled with some of the writing I've gotten to work with. And when the words are that good, people want to come and play. They just do. So I think there wasn't much of a change between season 1 and 2, just because of the pedigree of who was already attached.
With the worlds shifting, the focus shifting from one season to the next, did you find people trying to replicate what they had seen and project, or were they picking it up off the page and creating?
Hold on, I got to think about what I can say.
Yes, sorry.
I know this is the scary.
Yes, now we're into the fraught area. Okay, this is what
Follow-up question, what happens at the end of 208?
We're trying to.
Where do we go in
Okay.
season
Spoilers.
3?
You know, I used to make jokes about stuff like that during This Is Us, and I would just like make stuff up, and then people would like.
That it was on
think
deadline?
Yeah, totally. And I'm like, well, actually, Deja becomes an astronaut. Really? No. Anyway, right? Yes. Okay, so it is known that we go out into the world in season 2. So there wasn't really any replicating because it was such a different, like the characters are different and their lives are different and what's happening in the season is different. So
This season's so crazy, you guys.
and there's a lot. Dan loves to send a script with a lot of new characters. You get to season 2, you're like, recurs.
We also
Yeah.
do go back to the bunker too, so I bet some of the bunker casting there may have been people leaning into what they knew of the bunker, possibly. Although we didn't do as much bunker casting.
No, there wasn't as much bunker casting, and it was, and the people who did it, most of what was happening on this show, it wasn't. People didn't have that same like overreaction that they did on This Is Us, so it wasn't bringing that into it. Like we really had to actively dial it down during every session on This Is Us. We were giving that note. On this one, people sort of got what the tone was and knew how to fit in
Just
better.
a sign. You don't have to cry, just above the reader.
I know you could sort of tell when somebody was coming in, like it was really primed. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Menthol stick in the car, ready to go.
It's okay. We actually, so once things switched over to self-tapes during the pandemic, we would give pre-directs. And so I'm like, I'm just going to give you all the note now since you have to do this at home.
Yeah.
This is the tone. You're probably crying more right now because of the pandemic. It's not actually what we're looking for. But we are telling a lot of different stories and different types this season. So it was just, it was fun because on the same show, there's a lot of different stuff going on.
Yeah. Well, obviously it's very fun. The goal for actors is to play and play in the room or play virtually. But for especially day players in smaller roles, do you have any advice that you give to actors to be better self-directors and self-editors of their auditions?
Yeah, I'm interested to hear what
You can give
John
them
has to say.
directly to me if you want, because
Yeah, 'cause that was my next question. Was
I will
John.
take them.
It's well, here's the thing that people tend to miss, and they missed it coming into the room too. But like in the room, I can fix it. For self tapes, I really can't. Context clues are everything, and there's a lot of times, especially on shows like this, where we can't tell you that much about what's going on. So I am real careful to include enough so you can figure it out. But that means more than reading the dialogue. Is it interior, exterior? Is it who else is in the room? Like, we try to give you enough so that you can put together what you are bringing to it. It's just part of the prep, and I am shocked how many people don't do it. Like, my note is often context clues ? Because somebody just wasn't paying attention. So that, to me, other than that, I think people get what to do, and I think people have gotten very good at self-tapes. We offered, as part of the new deal, but we would have done it anyway, Zooms or in person when we can. Almost nobody takes us up on it, and you should. But even if you don't, and I get the appeal of doing a self-tape. If I was an actor, I would love that. I would like none of the nerves and sitting in traffic and like psyching myself out while I'm stuck in Wilshire. So I get the appeal of like, I can do it a few times. I can take a break. I can watch it in an hour and to see it makes sense to me. And we always let people send 2 takes per scene. So play. I have no idea where I was going with that anymore. And scene.
You landed the plane.
Don't cry. Don't cry so much.
John, do you have anything to add to that of your creative process evolving over the last 5-ish years?
I mean, nothing smarter than any actor would say. It's been wild, going through pandemic, at least for me, was when it really shifted. Everything became self-tape, and that was a massive adjustment, and still is. And now that's normal, right? And I think what Josh is saying is exactly right. Like, when I realized or accepted that, okay, we're going to be doing this solo in isolation, right? The way to have the tape, there's tricks, and there's doing our lighting and adding a prop if it helps, but not if it's distracting. And there's things you can do to make it's a piece of media now, right? And it needs to be watchable and dynamic rather than it's my presence in a room, which is a whole nother thing. And I do feel like in some ways, well, I mean, I could go on forever. Everybody's heard it. But the specificity to the details and the context and the tone of the story is everything. And if you're not able to find it, then it's maybe emailing casting, but it's also it's reading it with somebody and talking about it and making sure that you've got a fully fleshed out idea, which is hard because we get, very little time, more than we used to, thank you guys, but very little time, and we're busy and all that. But the work that I get feedback on, positive feedback these days, is when I had a strong take going in, but then I bothered to read it a few times, or hopefully get to read the whole script, and you start imagining relationship and setting more than just how am I going to say this line cool? You know what I mean? Because I'm still trying to say the line cool.
Yeah.
And he does.
And I do.
I will say the other thing that we're always looking for, and this is like headshots or anything, this is a general note, any show, I am looking for a full thought bubble over your head. Even when you are not talking, I want the world to feel real. I want you to be thinking something, even if the line is like, here's your coffee, ma'am. I want a full thought bubble about whatever. Who you're talking to, what time of day. Again, pick it up from the context clues. Don't just impose that stuff, but it's usually there. Like high-end restaurant. I'm offering coffee to somebody. This may be a very fancy person that I'm offering coffee to. Whatever. This needs to be active even when you're not talking. That's what I look for in the headshots too. Are your eyes engaged in a way that I want to know what you're thinking, because you're thinking something. And that I think is actually one of the gifts of self-tapes that sometimes would get lost in the room for subtle performers who are very internal, where that could get lost. But when you're doing it and the camera's right there, like the camera's gonna be on you, it'll pick that up. It'll also pick it up if you're cheating.
It's actually interesting. You've just identified when I respond to something. I think that's what it is. I feel like I'm in the scene with them. I'm like connecting in on the scene, and that makes a lot of sense the way you just described that.
I hope you're not implying we send you people without thought bubble. Well, those two are done, but that one.
It never once happened. No.
Well, I would like to dive into that a little bit more. What is the approval process conversations like? What are those ideas pinging back and forth? What's popping off the screen to you all?
Yeah, I want to know about that too. What I mean,
The actors on the panel.
It's a different conversation when you're talking about Julianne and Marsden, and you know. But if you're bringing in a recurring for 3 episodes or 5, how many people are you seeing? How many people are you sending to Hoberg? What are you? What are you How many are you responding to? Those numbers, man. Like we would love some insight into that. If you feel like I'm gonna sit down here actually for this question.
No, actually taking Laura's job.
They're gonna call you next time, John.
Yeah.
Well, I'll start and then let John sort of finish the process. It depends on the role in terms of how many we see. Like really, like for the co-stars or some of the guest stars where we really know the target we're trying to hit, it really like anywhere from like 12 to 20, somewhere in there. And I'm probably going to know 60% of them. Because I want to know that there are going to be some people in there that like I've seen their work. I've probably maybe cast them before, auditioned them before, and I know that like they're going to bring the right general stuff. And then whatever that other percentage ends up being was me being like, nah, I liked your face. You look like what I think this role is. Let's see if I'm right. And have cast a lot of very fun people over the years just from being like, oh my God, they were so cool. And so that's sort of how it starts. But like for some, like for a really big role, we'll see a lot more people, you know, especially the series regulars.
How many are we talking about? You guys aren't curious? I have a microphone, so.
I mean, on this show, it wasn't as many.
Mm-hmm. Why?
Well,
I've always wanted to do this.
Isn't his battery dead yet?
The way that this did not happen backstage.
Well, because like Julianne did not have to audition.
No. So Julianne aside, I mean, like, you know, and series regulars aside, I don't mean to put you in an awkward situation. Yeah. I just mean like a 3-5 episode recurring role. It matters.
It's easier because Dan is clear on what he wants, like I said,
right,
and he's usually good at expressing that. And like, this is the target to hit.
Name a showrunner who's not. I'm kidding. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, I'm going to put that down for But like, well, I've worked for the kind of showrunners before who also come at it from a different point of view, which is like, it can like bring me whatever and I'll adjust the writing a little bit if I really respond to somebody, and it can be a much more fluid process, and then you're really throwing it open wider.
Right.
So that it really varies. We probably saw more for Billy than the other recurs, just because it was very open on what it could be.
Yeah.
I really don't remember. Remember I had a newborn? Literally, like, there's a lot about the first year that I might be making up.
Yeah.
Totally not sure. There were definitely some episodes where I'm like, we cast them, they're great. I do not remember. I had gotten 2 hours of sleep that week. I really don't remember. I would tell you if I had any kind of ballpark, but it's just not up there anymore. But I do remember, like, because Billy was more undefined, we threw the net wider. Like for the kids, for example,
let's talk about young Billy.
We saw a lot because especially when you're talking about young talent and you don't want them to feel good for a kid actor, you want them to be a good actor who happens to be a kid.
Right.
So for them, it was much more of a search, and we saw a lot more. Again, no idea what the number was, but many, many, many. to narrow it down.
How did you find Little Me?
Yeah.
Have you guys seen Little Me?
That casting was perfect.
I, honest to God, still think I might be related to that kid.
I just met him. I just had a general with him because I'm like, he was such good casting, but like Brian read with him and then he went to set and I hadn't met him and I'm like, you were great. And by the way, he had a blink and you'd miss it moment on The Last of Us too.
Oh, yeah.
And it was one of those things where I was like, is that him? And like literally, like you see like half of his face. And
That
I'm
guy's
like, wow.
awesome.
So like your first two like real credits are like two of the most popular shows on TV. It's at which point I'm like, yeah, this kid's got something.
Yeah.
Anyway, my process on that is we got to have the match, and Lord knows we did a lot of it on This Is Us. It always makes me cry. I think Dan might do it to be mean.
Oh, definitely. 100%.
Yeah,
You're,
he's
like,
like, we
so
weren't going to
good
do a
at it."
flashback, but we could mess with
It's
John.
really funny.
Yeah.
Just to see your face.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
so-
the
okay,
3-year-old blind kid that we had to cast on This Is Us, like, I know he was laughing at me. But really, like, I will put your picture or whoever's picture up on one side of the screen and then go through the submissions on the other.
Wow.
And see, like, who even looks close. And it is a real slow process.
Thanks for looking at my face for so long.
Anything I say at this point, I end up in deadline. So I'm just going to glide
I have
right.
your face on half of my laptop, but it's like it's completely unrelated. That's just
We can put
Just
John in the
aesthetically
hot seat
pleasing.
now. Yeah.
What does Anna have to say about that? a little awkward.
Wonderful desktop.
yeah, it's quite nice.
Anyways, it is just a very slow process. But I remember seeing his headshot and going, God, it looks just like him. Especially, the other thing we did with you is you've been doing this a while. So I was able to find older pictures of you
Right.
when you were younger. So it really,
when I auditioned for that role,
it was a long.
he told me I was
process.
crying too much, and honestly, I see now that he was right.
And it was one of the times where like it was clear to me who was going to get the part.
Yeah.
I try not to put my thumb on the scale with this team. That is, I feel like the work is self-evident. And I find that if I push, sometimes there's like, well, what if I like somebody else? So I'm like, nope, you guys just decide.
That's interesting.
But we put him first.
Yeah.
Right.
I always wondered, like, the order, like, if you do.
I don't always. Usually we just do alphabetical, like you guys, especially because like for the roles where it's just more open, and I really like them all.
Yeah.
Like you guys, it is a taster's choice at this point. But when it came to Bo,
Right.
he was so good that I'm like, okay, I want everybody else. And there were a bunch of other good little kid actors. Like it wasn't the acting, but like the look and his mannerisms, and then that really came through in the filming, like the cut from him to you, the way he even fought
Yeah.
and moved his body
Yeah.
the same way that you did. It was eerie.
It's incredible. You guys killed it, and he's a great actor.
We've done a lot of matching, and like I think in like many years of doing it and being very proud of a lot of the matching, that was the best.
You're very good.
I credit to Bo, like his face, but like the mannerisms and the acting and everything else was just him.
Let me lead the witness just a little longer though, because I'm here. And I'm so often
we should ask
just
the witness.
sitting there
How
and
does that
wondering what's going on. It won't be that uncomfortable, but so on a 3 to 5 episode recur, right? It matters a lot, but it's not so you see however many people you see. You see 50 people or whatever, and then you're gonna pass how many, and then what's that conversation like? You know? So like you passed what? 10, 5? How many are you passing?
In that range, right? That's
Well, again, it depends on the role a little bit,
Yeah.
and,
Sure.
and how defined it is,
Right.
And this particular group, I like to send around 6, maybe 8. Like I don't want to send too many. I really want to send our best, and that I think is really what they want. And then again, like I don't. There is no conversation after that unless sometimes they'll call and they'll ask and they'll have a question or something, and then I may weigh in a little bit. But otherwise, I really like. There's a whole writer's room full of people. Like, it's something to keep in mind. Like, we're the gatekeeper. But once we've decided who goes through the gate, sometimes it's a conversation. Usually I want the team to be happy and not feel like, well, Josh told us we had to cast this guy.
Right.
Like I really want them to get there on their own and be happy with their decision. And then there's other stakeholders too. And it's nice working for Dan Fogelman because usually if Dan signs off, like the other stakeholders just go, yeah, okay.
Right.
But yeah, now that's where like turn it over to you. I don't know what the conversations are like.
Well, so for a role like that, like what we're talking about, we'll watch the auditions in the room a lot of times. It kind of varies on what it is, but there'll be times when,
Like, what do you mean in the room? You
like, we'll put it on the computer with the other writers,
right on.
especially when we're kind of excited about this. What do you guys think? And it's a way to get. So, you know, like I might text Dan and be like, I really like this person for this role. You know, sometimes he just jumps right in. He's like, I think this might be it. But we want to get kind of our little core creative team, just like, what do they feel? And,
Right.
And it's a really honest room. It's not a negative thing. It's like everyone's rooting to find the right person.
Yeah.
But then we're kind of getting the view of, you know, what are there with writers' assistants, 10 people in that room.
Dan probably gets the deciding vote, obviously, but
Yeah.
like, are there split decisions? Have there been? And
There'll be stuff where we'll really debate it for a little bit.
Yeah.
And Dan is, like you were saying, he mulls it over. Like he does that with a lot of stuff where even with a story point, you'll bring it up and then he'll be like, I know it's nothing, but you know he'll still think about it if it has traction. And so he'll listen. Like if the room is kind of going the other way and he's really liking someone, ultimately if he just says this is what it is and he feels it, the whole world could tell him it's the wrong choice and he would go with his gut. And his gut's
it's awesome.
perfect. I think he's got a genius for casting. He just has an eye for something. But he's also willing to listen to the people, you know, creatively he respects around him. So I think he also likes to just see if people react. Like he'll show something in the room just to be like, are you laughing when I'm laughing? And there's a trick, I think, in the edit I've noticed. I do this too, but it's like when you're showing someone else work, you are more critical of that work because even if you say afterward, what are your thoughts, and you're not going to listen to them.
Yeah.
When I'm watching a cut, I'm watching it different.
You're
and
watching
it's
it
the
through
same
their
thing
eyes,
with like if I'm sitting at home looking at a casting tape, I'm like, okay, I think that's the one. But then when I'm watching it with someone else, then I'm a little bit more like critical, or I'm looking at it through their eyes in a weird way. And it's all of that thing. How do I take myself out of it to just see it? And I think that's part of what that is. And I think that's why he does that in the room also.
That
Start
asking questions.
No, start asking questions. Guys, thank you so much for, like, I gotta say, like, I do feel I'm raising the YouTube views of this. This is really awesome and helpful.
We've got some sound bites.
Never what you want to hear. But actually, my question for John, like 107, when we got it, was a devastating read.
Yeah.
Like I read it first out of our staff, and I told everybody, I'm like, guys, like, you sit down quietly and read this tonight because you're gonna spend a couple days, like, so like be in the right headspace. I'm telling you now. But then it's something I experienced. There were so many roles in it. Usually, I'm not that familiar with every moment in the script. But I was, just because there were like 1,000 new characters. So when I actually watched it, I had trouble distancing myself from it because there were no surprises anymore. How do you keep watching the performances be fresh as a finished product, like throughout the editing process?
Oh, just through...
like you wrote it,
Right.
you were there,
Yeah.
and then you're putting the final product together. How do you find in you...
You know, Dan he's a great writer, and I think he's an even better editor. And it's one of the things I've learned in show business is if someone is so touched in an area, you get out of the way. And so even with that episode, which was sort of my baby, I would go in there, but it's like I'm so tied to certain things in that, and we needed to make cuts. And so it's like, I don't know. You have to sort of, again, it's all about sort of distancing yourself and looking at something as if it's not related to you or came from you or whatever. Do you remember, by the way, the Marcia casting was the most passionate fights I think we had, if anything, in the entire season?
I didn't know how
That
much fighting
actor's
We're
fantastic.
not
happened
fighting,
after we
but
left. But well,
there was a lot of debate. Like, is this the right person? Because I remember I really felt like this is a crucial role for the entire episode is that character.
Well, the two that we knew we really needed were her and the
janitor.
The janitor.
Yeah.
Yep.
I can't
Yeah.
whatever his,
That
his name.
That man.
Blanking on his
Okay,
yes.
well,
JD.
So cute.
Fantastic.
because they're they're the audience. Like they're the ones who don't know what's going on, and if they're not going for, like, we knew they had to be perfect for everything else to work. And then we ended up with other characters who were great too. The guy pouring the coffee or the tea or whatever it was. Which,
Yeah.
God,
There were a lot of
broke my heart. But like those were the two, and that casting session was devastating. And I was the one reading with the Marshes, and I was gutted. I had to go home and hold Molly. It was really hard because I haven't read it with you, but like I'm not Tiffany, but I'm good at reading, and
Dude,
I
I believe
really
you.
got into it that day and was just destroyed. But yeah, I didn't know what the conversation was afterwards. See, that's the
No,
stuff
it wasn't.
that
It wasn't bad at all. It's like I just remember.
There were
I think it was
there were a
one
lot of good choices.
There were great choices. It was the most passionate I think I'd been about all season, to the point when Dan was kind of like, it's not the biggest role, but in my mind, I think it almost was.
Yeah.
And so it really, it was interesting. Just that one in
No,
particular.
I agree. When I read it, I knew like that there.
It's pivotal. If you
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
get that.
Marsha, like we got to get right.
Yeah, I think so.
So not a lot of thought goes into this. Is basically
Yeah.
what we're-
No.
Phoning it in.
Before we head out, John, you were tasked with writing 107.
Yeah.
And I'm curious how much of that framework was there when you started writing, and how much of it was your free space to create and play, but you knew where you had to get them to land.
So basically, I'm in the room every day, and Dan. Our process is Dan is in there as we come up with our big ideas, and then he's got 12 shows going on, and so I come in and start building out a version of what we talked about, and we know it'll be kind of, I call it the sloppy blocks version. It's like you're putting big things together, the bricks of what the story could be, and we get a version that might work, and then Dan will come back in, he'll make adjustments, and we go through that process. So by the time anybody on the show goes off to outline, we know what the story is, and we know what all the beats are, and we know where it needs to go. That one I knew I was writing, and I'm running that room, and so Dan gave his sign off on it, and we were all on the same page. But I had more freedom than I think another writer on the show might, and so I did make some changes just going through as I felt it. And it was a hard one to write, just for all the reasons you're talking about. It was so upsetting, and my wife was away. We have a place up in Santa Barbara County, and she took the dogs and went up there while I was writing this, and we had bad cell coverage, and I kept looking at the security footage, like the gates were open, a dog was wandering around, but I couldn't get her on the phone, and that was my way of relating to what was going on with trying to get your wife. But I really felt it. I felt this and so what I decided to do, I just lived it from, I would wake up, I was at home alone, I'd wake up at 11 in the morning, I would just kind of work on it until 11 at night, wake up again, and just kind of almost like rolling out dough, just make it better at the beginning, because I wanted it to feel like it was happening right then, it just in the way it was written. So there were choices that were made along the way, just as you start brushing stuff out, and you're like, okay, that doesn't, and the whole goal was, how do I just make it as emotional as possible? And that's,
You did it.
I wanted
Knocked it out
to
of the
hurt, I wanted Josh to have to read these roles again and again.
I do wonder sometimes if like there's a camera on me as I'm reading this.
Just watching your face.
Yeah, it was a devastating read, and yeah, reading with all those people, and we did a lot of in person for that episode because it had, like, you could tell like this was an emotional peak that like, okay, everybody has to be perfect in this one.
I feel like the great thing about that episode is every department, everything came together. The directing was exactly what it needed to be. The casting was exactly what it needed to be. The set design it was one of those, we could feel it in the moment. Like, okay, everything has come together, which was really special.
Just to generally shout out, I know we're like running over, but like to generally shout out to like what it's like working with a group of people, all of whom are at the top of their games, and the stuff that the audience never notices, but like being in the concept meeting and hearing the conversation, or getting to go to the set and see the stuff that like, that's not going to show up on camera. Like nobody's really going to notice that, but it adds to the texture in such a way that if it wasn't there, it would feel like a set. And a lot of the same people from This Is Us to Paradise, and the skill level will always blow me away. And I think we all raise each other's games knowing like what the set is going to be and the level of detail and the level of perfection that and the seamlessness to it that again like the audience shouldn't notice it. The audience shouldn't notice the performance like while it's happening. Like that, and to aspire to that, and to have Dan and the writers and everybody else pushing us to have that be the level that we're at, and nothing is ever fine. I hate that word. I hate when I work for somebody who settles for fine, and to work with a group where like nobody ever settles for fine is really, I'm incredibly grateful.
Dan hires people who everybody cares so much, and he is so good at trusting people when he thinks they're very good at what they do, and he will let people do what they do, and it's great. Yeah.
Can I just say while we're running over time, can I for just 1 second just say
In closing.
Yeah, well, thank you, but because we're a lot of actors in the room, right? Primarily, right? And so I speak for the trees. To hear you guys talk this way, to the opportunity to come and lend yourself to be a part of something that everybody, all these departments care so deeply about, that you give so much to the casting process of a 1 episode guest star that you go home emotionally drained. And I believe it. I know that about you already, but it's really cool to hear you talk about that you invest yourself so deeply the way you would have to write something like 107, that like you're feeling the distance between you and your wife. You're experiencing this emotionally so that we can experience it emotionally. And it does start with Dan, and it's infectious, and it brings out everything that you are and all of these department heads are as artists. And then to get to come along and play in a world that's being built with that much care, maybe a takeaway or a thought that I'm having now, and we can have it too, is to remind ourselves, talking about tapes, that like when we do get to pick something up, you get 24 hours or whatever, and you're busy and all that, but not all of the time, but some of the time that material represents a story that's already in its 11th hour. Like the bread is almost baked, like it's ready to go, and it's built on that much care to get there. And maybe these kinds of conversations can help us break through the isolation that we feel, where everything is just a challenge and I have to do it, and remind ourselves that like, oh, I get for at least a moment to participate in something that people care this deeply about. And it's certainly an honor to read for it, and then occasionally to get to participate in something like this. It has been one of the honors of my lifetime. So I just wanted to say that, and thank you guys for this conversation, because it's cool.
We all love him.
How could you not cast the guy?
Well, thank you all. I love the show so much. I respect all of you all's creativity so much in the show and the world that you have built and continue to expand. But please join me in thanking our beautiful panel.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.